So you'll know it's on air. Hey everyone, today I am talking to Mary Spender. If you don't know who she is, she has an amazing YouTube channel that's called Mary Spender. I first saw Mary at the NAMM show this year. She was at the private QA and launch of the new John Mayer amps, and she was the first one to ask John Mayer questions. So definitely after this video, check that video out because that's a good way to start into her catalog. Also, she has an amazing channel that covers a plethora of everything from the songs she writes to the songs she does covers on, to gear reviews, to educational stuff about gear. So check that out. And then as somebody, I'm just going to put it in because it ties in, and as somebody just mentioned, they subscribed to her because they saw her on Anderton's website. So that was one of you guys out there said that. So that's really cool. So we're going to just talk some gear, and I'm going to ask her a bunch of questions because I asked you guys to ask her some questions. So let's ask her some questions. Are you up for it?
Of course.
Of course. And you know what? You should take a second and just tell us a little about yourself so that we learn a little about you too.
All right. Well, I'm a British singer-songwriter, and I just love everything to do with electric guitars, but I'm learning. I'm honest about it, and I'm learning things every day that I had no idea about in the electric guitar world. And so I just make videos about that, really. Pretty simple.
Right. Right? It is simple. It's the journey, right? That's
absolutely, yeah.
That's what I tell everybody when I'm doing on my channel. It's a journey, and you get to watch the goods and the bads.
Yes.
Okay, so the first question was it's a two-part question, right? So Chris O'Brien wanted to know, could you ask her about the best way to get a band together? So I'll let you answer each part. That's the first part. So he's asking you, is there a tactic that you use, or is there when you get a group of musicians together, do you have a philosophy? How do you weed them out? How do you find them?
It can take a while. It really depends what you're after, whether it's being in a band with friends and you all play the right instruments to even form a band. Not that you actually have to have a set instrument thing. You can do whatever you like. But with me, it's taken quite a long time to meet the right musicians around the place that I live, and making sure that location is convenient for rehearsals and stuff like that, and making sure that you're friends so that you can go on tour with them and put up with them for days on end. It's really just about building a community, and there are so many opportunities like open mic nights, and finding or maybe just going to gigs and seeing the same musicians over and over, and they might just happen to play drums or bass, and it's all about community and who you'll just end up meeting musicians through other musicians. And
so like social networking kind of thing.
But like real life social networking. Obviously, I guess that's another way. It's put a search out on a YouTube group or a Facebook group, and put the word out that you're looking for a band. That's definitely a modern approach to it.
So to expand on his question, because I have a question too. I'm always curious, because you're a singer-songwriter, so you could just take an instrument like a guitar and accompany yourself in a normal coffee shop or small venue, right, or even a large venue. So when you approach a band, are you looking for a complete set? Do you look for a band that's complete that will accompany you, or do you build it piece by piece through that?
I've built my current band piece by piece, but actually they all knew each other and they all recommended each other, and it all just worked out really, really perfectly. But in the past, it's just been sort of through recommendations, and you can sort of end up with a rhythm section. Like my drummer and bassist now, they're trying to form an actual rhythm section so they can go on tour with other musicians when I'm not touring, and that sort of thing. So, but then they're all at liberty to do their own thing when they want to. So
of course I'm going to ask this. So have you ever had to let go of a musician, and was it hard? Or I mean, obviously it's hard, but right? Like, have you had right?
So my parents will laugh at this because they knew that I was going to take music really, really seriously when I was a teenager. And I formed a band instantly once I got to my secondary school, which is around ages 13, 14 here in England. I formed a band, found friends who I basically taught them to play bass guitar and drums and stuff. Some of them were having lessons. But when they didn't take it seriously enough, they were out. They were gone, and I would interchange them. And I just took it. I took it to the next level at my school. I just knew exactly what I wanted to do. So when it comes to firing members now, like I have never fired. Whilst being a professional musician, I've never fired a band member. It's just, logistically, sometimes it just doesn't work out. I've never fallen out with a band member either. It's just, differences in other things and artistic ambitions and stuff like that.
That makes sense. Okay, so he's got a second part. So he says also he wants to know about your approach to songwriting, and I want to add to that too, just because that's a question I actually have too. So he wants to know, how do you approach songwriting? But I have a second question, which is, do you approach it with the guitar first, or is it in your head first? Like, how do you? Well,
I used to think that it was both at the same time, but actually I definitely start with guitar first, definitely. And that's why the guitar has never gone from my, I've been approached by record labels and had meetings with people, and they've told me to put the guitar down. And so just my stubbornness is just to play it more. But songwriting for me, it all begins with the guitar and begins with some chords or just from jamming. And I actually have to remind myself that if I pick up the guitar and I'm just playing, songwriting will happen. Okay. Like it might not be a complete thing. It might not be something that I use. It definitely won't be a hit single, but it will just happen if I give myself the opportunity to songwrite by picking up the guitar. If I'm just sat at my desk emailing people, I'm not writing a song. So
the reason I asked that was when playing with singers before, I've had singers just show up with like what I call poetry. They wrote the song out in word, and they go, I have this song today. And that was my first experience. I couldn't tell you the first person to do that to me, but the first time I had a band practice where a singer came in and said, I wrote a song. And I was like, okay. And then they showed me the words, and I'm like, well, where's the song? And they're like, this is the song. And we literally, as a band, constructed music, and they put the lyrics on top of the music. And that was the opposite of my experience before, which is you wrote music, and then you took a topic or a feeling of words and you inserted them into the flow of that music. So I think that's why I like these kind of questions, because it's always strange to me how that works, right?
Do you know what? It's strange to me too. Like when you hear of Taylor Swift, she just says words into a voice memo, and then that becomes a song, or she hums something, or she hears something. It's like I don't work that way, but that doesn't mean that either way is wrong or right. It's just whatever allows you to create music in song form is the right way, and whatever works for you. But you have to figure out what it is that kicks it all off, because inspiration isn't always gonna come to you. You have to sometimes just sit down and work at it.
Yeah, when I watched I agree. When I watched the documentary with Michael Jackson, he talked about how he once called somebody and hummed the song to them.
Yeah.
And then and then I was
have you heard his early recordings of him sort of using his voice to write the songs?
Yeah, yes, right?
Like unbelievable. He's a genius. He was a genius.
Yeah, right. And so he was right, because and so what's interesting to me is, when I heard, so probably the same thing you watched, when I watched him do it, to me, he was actually, his voice to me was the bass line, the bass guitar line. When he was doing it, right, the one I watched is when he was doing Beat It, right, to me, he was humming the bass line. And then I look at artists like the Beatles, and Paul McCartney could write with a bass line and put, right?
Yeah.
So as I said, to me, it's such an odd thing. You're starting from the rhythm section, and then we're going to bring the other instruments and the vocals on it. So I love those kind of questions, because it's so out there how we all think.
Yeah, and it's so different. Everyone is so different. So it's important to not be put off by that, because if you aren't singing the way Michael Jackson was singing, it doesn't mean that you can't write a song. None of us can sing that way.
So Mike's got a great question too. Mike Reinhardt says, as independent musician and YouTube personality, what is the biggest time suck you face? Time suck means time taking up time. Taking up time you face, and what is a necessary task you dread doing the most? So, and how do you overcome both? So basically what he's saying is, what sucks up most of your time and what in that time is the most dreaded? That's a better way to look at it.
Okay. I think anything admin based. I think being a self-employed musician, you're basically your own secretary and admin person and PR person and just all that stuff. And it's just basically being on emails all day, and, you know, ready to answer people's questions or get back to someone about a gig or, you know, something that they need to know quite instantly. But it's still enjoyable and it's still, you know, it's still communication. So it's not that bad, but it does take up a lot of time. But so what was the second part of the question?
So like admin takes up your time. So what is it? What did you dread the most?
Probably rendering the videos. Like, I don't mind making the videos. I don't mind setting up my lighting and get everything rolling. But I think I love editing as well. I really, really love editing. It's just then rendering it and then, you know, making it an actual file and then uploading it to YouTube. That's just, I just wish there was, maybe I just need quicker internet or something. It just takes so much time always. And actually I've started editing my Tuesday talk, but I'm yet to finish it. And I just know that I've got an evening of rendering awaiting me after this lovely phone call.
I find what I hate about rendering is the lying timeline where it's like 10 minutes, 2 minutes, 18 minutes. You're like, wait, how did it go back up? Why did it go back up? You were going to be done. Yesterday, my wife and daughter were in the pool and they wanted me to go swimming, you know, because it's really hot where I'm at. And I said, fine, I'll be there in 2 minutes. Literally, it said 1 minute to go. I said 2. And when I got there, my wife's like, that was like 15 minutes. I go, yeah, because it kept changing when it was going to be done. And I was babysitting it. And
and that's the thing, you can't, I've tried to leave things uploading overnight.
Yep.
And by the morning, you're just like, oh, it hasn't uploaded. Why haven't I got the notification that my video's up there? And it's because something went wrong. Like your internet did something and it's not there. And then you have to start all over again. So you have to babysit it. You have to be in the room making sure it actually happens.
Yes.
Oh, if only people knew. No, they do know. Everyone's uploaded a YouTube video.
And then on that, I'm going to ask you this, because I have a saying or a thought or a philosophy, whatever you want to call it. But I say, it doesn't matter what you do in life, whatever your business is, whether you're a musician or, you know, you're a restaurant. I find the thing that everybody doesn't realize that every business has to do, including musician, is collections. You always have to find a way. So I always ask people when they say, what do you dread? I go, do you have to collect? Do you find yourself trying to get the money that's owed to you or the promises that are owed to you? Do you ever find, and if so, do you do it or do you find it better to find somebody else to do it for you?
It's just me. So if someone hasn't paid me, like usually people are pretty on it.
Yes.
And you can always be slightly aware of like bigger companies who have longer, you know, times of getting invoices on their system and stuff. But yeah, usually people are pretty good, but it is just me. Like I'm the one who asks for the money.
Yes.
I hate that. I hate that is me, but yeah, it's all down to me.
I find it more awkward because the fact that when you're presented with having to make that phone call, or that connection, that talk, and it's like I agree, very rare does something like that happen. But when it does happen, I found it's even worse when you're the product, right? Like it just seems so much better if it could just not be you having to do this. But
I know. I know. Well, I actually think the process of agreeing your fee is way worse than collecting your fee. Like when they're just like, so how much are you going to charge? And you're like, I don't know where to go, because it can fluctuate, obviously.
Yes.
Depending on what they want, depending on who they are, depending on, you know, what you're doing. Yep. So that's always a very, very scary moment.
And then since
in all businesses, actually.
Absolutely. Well, bidding the job is the second hardest thing to do, right?
Yeah,
in any business. And since we're talking about money, somebody has a question about that. Eric wants to know, is she able to do music as her primary career, or do you have to have a day job too?
So I'll be honest. Right now, I've had a day job since I started taking YouTube more seriously, because I was a freelance musician, doing cover gigs, doing some original music, but mainly doing corporate events. So I've been self-employed for a few years now, but over the past few months, well, actually past 8 months, I have had a 9-to-5 job. So every video that comes out every weekend, every Tuesday, is done over weekends or evenings. So yeah, but it's worth it. I think being able to have the art as art rather than as your job, just as a break, is always quite nice. But saying that, I have actually handed in my notice, and I will be freelance again from the 1st of August. So if anyone wants to give me a job, please help.
Congratulations. It's tough, right? You know, right, to make that step. So yeah, I want to tell you congratulations, because it's exciting, you know, when you make that decision, right?
Yeah. Well, it's also about just sort of thinking what you want to achieve, and I've managed to get some work experience in a field that is always necessary. So I work sometimes in finance in companies, which when people hear my name in Mary Spender working in the finance team, they're always like a little bit questioning, but it's always going to be there. So I think as a musician, sometimes you know, it's great to like just throw qualifications out the window and stuff like that, and just go off and go on tour. But if you're not employable, then, you know, sometimes times can be really, really hard as a musician, and there are different parts of the year that are more lucrative than others. So you just have to be really sensible and make sure that you're just not in debt, really.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's one thing, regardless if you're an actor or an artist, musician, or a YouTube person or whatever it is, people don't realize that there are seasons, right?
Yeah,
there's right. So it's like a lot of other industries that you don't think about, you know, right? That just there's good right throughout the year, and so you got to manage the lean, the desert to dry times.
Absolutely, because they can get very, very dry.
Yes. Here's another great. Benjamin says, what is your dressing room amp, backstage amp? Okay. And what, so actually, you know what, he's cutting it up sections. So I want to start with that. So better question is, you know, when you warm up, when you practice at home, obviously you're a professional musician, you play with an amp. What amp do you use? The big amp for everything, or do you have a smaller amp that you use when practicing hotel rooms at home, you know, what have you?
Well, so it's actually only a new toy, but I do have an orange micro crush little thing in the background, which I have started using. And when I'm traveling now in the past few weeks, I've taken it with me everywhere, which is great. But actually in the past, my backstage amp has just been an acoustic guitar. It's just, I've always played acoustic, so I know the differences. You know, obviously there's so many differences between electric and acoustic, but it really warms up my hands, and it's just easy to transport. So yeah, it's actually been an alternative answer. It's just been an acoustic guitar for me.
I agree wholeheartedly. I find that when I leave amps around to practice with, I find that I sometimes won't even turn them on. So I've learned to just have an acoustic around. It's a good time. And plus, playing the acoustic, it's a little bit more of a workout. So it's great.
Absolutely. Well, actually, I don't think people talk about this enough. And I know that Rob Chapman has made a video on it, but playing electric guitar without an amp, you can still hear it, as long as it's obviously a quiet environment. You can still hear it. And actually, there's quite a lot that sort of, it teaches you different things about the instrument when it's not coming through a huge amplifier or through a pedal board with lots of effects on it. It's just you and the guitar. So I sometimes like doing that too.
I agree 100%. We were talking about this earlier about when you use your technique, you're using your thumb.
Yeah.
Right. You know, right. And I said, I do the same thing, right? I use that same, different, but same kind of style. Right. And I don't know about you, but I adapted that because of the fact that I was playing so much without an amp.
Yeah.
Percussively. I was just hitting percussively for two reasons. One, I was hearing the drum. Right. I was hearing the one, like I was just hearing it. And so my hand started mimicking a clicking sound on the strings. Right. I just wanted to feel like I was in time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, mine came from, I played acoustic guitar. So I started out on electric, but when I was touring by myself, you know, I went to America and Europe, and I just took an acoustic guitar. And I took a loop pedal as well, went through that phase, and I would build up a band sound using my acoustic. So it, you know, my actual technique probably fits acoustic playing more than it does electric, and I'm having to adapt it all the time to make sure it actually sounds good through an amplifier. But yeah, it all started out from just not having a band. But now I have a band, I have to adapt to them because I can't just be like clicking all the way through. Although I still do that sometimes, you know, bad habits are deep, but yeah, it's all about figuring out what you want to sound like.
So I've had that issue. So I wonder if you had too. I've had the issue when recording because of my style.
Yeah.
That clicking high.
Yeah.
It's just horrible.
I know, it just doesn't sound the same, does it, when you're recording it?
Yes.
So when it's in a live environment at a live show, it sounds great. Well, it does to me anyway. But as soon as you record, or you know, playing to a click track, it's just another thing to get in sync, and it's yeah, it can be a nuisance, as people have told me in YouTube comments.
And then he has a second part of the question. Benjamin also asked, so what amp do you use, and what amp do you like? What amp do you use that you don't find you have to tweak a whole lot, mess with a whole lot? You know, you just like to plug into it and play.
Well, at the moment, I'm completely in love with my very, very new orange Rocker 32, because I like being able to have it on half in my studio, and then have it on full, obviously for live gigs. But before that, I was playing a Laney Lionheart. Oh. And that was useful because that had reverb on it, which the orange doesn't. But yeah, now I just leave everything sort of set up and have my pedal board ready to plug in, so I can just get everything. And I'm starting to write more and more with effects, which I've never really done before because I wasn't as into gear for songwriting. And now I'm really, really trying to use all the tools I have available.
It's funny you said that. I like the Lionheart. I think the Rocker Verb is better, but yes,
yeah, definitely.
But yeah, the reverb is a crutch. I love having reverb.
Me too. That's why I've got my turnip greens. I'm all good.
And then this is the last one from them, and it's from Mike. No, wait, I already did Mike's. I'm sorry, I jumped. It is. And I knew somebody was probably going to ask this. From Scott. He says, what do you think about Taylor Swift's effect on guitar sales, and how can you take advantage of it? And I'm sure he's done that because I did a video talking about Taylor Swift as being a possible candidate for a lot of girls playing guitar. So he's asking, how do you feel about that? You know,
is this the Van Halen versus Taylor Swift argument?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you know what? I really think, and it kind of goes for Ed Sheeran as well. I was listening to the Guitar Nerds podcast, and they were talking about, obviously, Ed Sheeran's new signature guitar has come through, and Taylor Swift, and they're just, if they are what it takes for people to pick up the instrument and fall in love with the guitar, then I don't have argument with it. Like, I just think they should actually play guitar more if that is having an impact. And obviously it does, there's a slight difference in how people play guitar, because they are looking at those people, although Ed Sheeran and Taylor Swift, they can both play,
Right.
just they're not necessarily virtuosos, they're not Steve Vais.
Right.
So I just think it's all personal. If it gets people playing the guitar, then it's only a good thing.
Yeah,
So it just doesn't matter.
I agree. What I noticed was then shortly after, or recently, Lady Gaga did a bunch of videos playing a Gretsch. I don't know if you saw that.
Right.
Right.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah. And my argument is never that my argument was simple on all this was artists that play guitar, right? Whether they're singers like you and songwriters and guitar players, or like you said, virtuosos. What I feel is I just don't like it when, like, Lady Gaga can play guitar, obviously, and she plays piano.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. And if she does that, it's better if she's doing it in front of people as well, instead of just dancing. Because eventually all I'm a musician, you're a musician, we love music. I have to have music all day, 24 hours a day, somewhere in my life, play music. But all that being said, I'm still a visual person.
Yeah.
And so visually, what you see is what you see. So if I see artists not playing an instrument and dancing, which is great because dance is fantastic as well as an art form. However, to me, it's not that I think every artist should be holding a guitar. My argument is always, if they do play guitar, can they at least show other people that that's part of their inspiration and their love too?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
so because I one of the best concerts, I know this is weird, but one of the best concerts I've ever been to was Pink. It was amazing. She's flying through the air and doing stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh,
right.
God. I've only seen videos of it, but it does look insanely incredible.
And that in itself is very, I mean, that's an art form that's, right. And that's, I mean, it's dangerous what she's doing. Right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And
she's had the accidents as well, which is absolutely terrifying.
And that's my point, and that's her thing. And so, like I said, I think it's interesting when pop stars who basically have big audiences, right? It's not that I think pop stars should have to play instruments. I think pop stars that do should advocate it.
Yes. Yeah.
Because
but it really depends, with Taylor Swift, I really feel that she's in control. The same with Lady Gaga. I really do feel that they're in control of their careers. Obviously, there are still huge teams behind them, but I really like it when you can tell that it's a genuine thing. And actually, weirdly enough, and I've mentioned this before in videos, but Avril Lavigne for me was a huge influence when I was a young teenager, and then Katy Perry, because they both initially started playing guitar, and Katy Perry was actually like she taught me chords that I'd never seen played before, because I was young and I was watching her videos, and so it sort of just doesn't really matter as long as they are playing. That's obviously important. They can't just stand holding a guitar. I hate that. There's nothing worse, because it doesn't make them look cool. You have to play. But yeah, whatever gets hands playing guitar is fine.
I agree. And so, perfect example, Katy Perry, I find she doesn't hold a guitar very often, right? She really has drifted away from it, and I only hope, because she said, like, maybe after the second album that she wanted to just do a Joni Mitchell-esque, nothing could compete with Joni Mitchell, but she wanted to do that sort of style album. Right.
And I think I think it would be welcomed if she actually just did stripped down versions of her songwriting. I just think it would work. And I think Ellie Goulding was also planning on doing that. But whether the market just says put out another dance record or, you know, pop record, I don't know. I just hope that they'll eventually drop one of those with them actually playing their instruments, because I know that they are musicians as well.
I love that. You know what I love? Speaking of that, I love that because I love that Ryan Adams did all of Taylor Swift's songs.
Yeah. Oh
I
my
love
God.
that album. That made me basically a Taylor Swift fan, right?
Yeah.
Because
Well, this
that
is the
was
thing about pop music, and it's always my argument as well. It's like they have the best teams of songwriters, as well as being very good songwriters themselves, and, you know, getting themselves to that level of career and having those hits. They also have the best production teams. And like, I was listening, this is going to be really embarrassing and I'm probably going to hate myself for saying this, but I was listening to a Selena Gomez song earlier and I was just like, this is an actual perfect pop record. This song is incredible. The production behind it is amazing. The songwriting, they were using a Talking Heads bass line as well. And I was like, that's incredible. That's genius. That's what pop music should sound like. But yeah, I ramble. I digress.
No, I 100% agree. Like I said, that's why I said I love it. I find that sometimes when we make fun of pop songs, right? Because it's so easy.
Yeah.
And then I always get my head turned when I see like Weezer do a cover of a Britney Spears song, or like when Chris Cornell did Michael Jackson, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And they put a very non-pop feeling on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize in the heart of it, there's a really good song there.
Yeah.
Right.
It's dressed differently sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. It's basically like a movie that they just put too much CGI in. Right.
Yeah. Actually, did you ever read the Sound on Sound article about Carly Rae Jepsen's Call Me Babe? Is it Call Me Maybe? Call Me Maybe or Call Me Baby? The level of production that went into that was academic. Like, it was unbelievable and so professional and so well done just for a pop record.
Right.
But it got a whole feature in Sound on Sound. It was just like, there's some real talent behind pop music nowadays as well. So
I absolutely agree. So these are the last two questions. These are the two I came up with. So I'm going to finish with my questions. Okay, ready? What guitar do you love, but it doesn't work for your style?
Ooh.
I know.
Okay, I think is that style of music or style of playing?
Yeah. Well, your style playing. So like, and I'll answer it too. A guitar that you just love, maybe the way it looks, the feeling, whatever it is, but it just does not fit the way you play guitar.
Probably, and maybe I just haven't played the right year yet or found my one. But I like the look of Gibson Les Pauls. And I know they are everyone's sought after guitar, but for me, they just don't work. They don't work in my hands. It's something when I see someone play, virtuosely or just intricately, or when they really, really are in love with that instrument, I'm in awe of them because I just can't get it to work. I just can't. But I've got a Les Paul shaped Vigier, so it's kind of weird. Like, I've sort of found my body type within that shape of guitar, but the Les Paul just doesn't work.
I have a huge addiction to and love all of the Ibanez 80s era, like Vi guitars, Satriani guitars,
right?
All those. And I own a bunch, but physically, if I had to play with people or on stage, I would never take any of those guitars. The necks are too thin. They have there's just, it just, for what, like I said, the way I play, they just don't feel the way I need them to feel, and they don't sound the way I need them to sound. But I'm attracted to them when I see them. right?
They are
Yeah.
works of art, definitely.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess I could get really silly and just say I would love to be able to play a 7-string one day, and I still want that Tosin Ibanez, but it wouldn't work for me. It would be
Yeah.
very unrealistic.
I agree. You know, that Tosin guitar that the, you know, actually, right? It when I saw it at the
Yeah,
NAMM show, right? And you see it at
yeah,
the
yeah,
NAMM
me
show,
too.
and you just looking at it, and there's just something instinctual about me that wants to try it,
Yeah,
but I know that, not that I don't think I could do it, but I think if I learned how to play that guitar, I have a fear that it will ruin something about the way I play now. Like reworking my brain and hands to play an 8-string with that wide of a neck and fan
yeah,
frets. I feel like
yeah,
by the time I got it, and that's because as a bass player, you know, you do that. You play 6-string bass, you play 5 or 4-string bass, and as you move around, you start getting uncomfortable with the other style of bass,
right.
right? So I think playing that kind of guitar would not so much ruin or damage the way I play, but I would change the physics of my head, you know.
So, do you think it would be more different than switching between electric and acoustic? Because essentially, those two, I know they're 6 strings, but they're still very different beasts. So,
Yeah, they are, but here's the reason I think about that. What the reason I find it different is not so much that the 8-string is a bigger string; it's harder to push down like an acoustic.
mhm,
It's the fan fret systems. It's longer
right,
scales. I think you
yeah,
could get away 24 3/4 to 25 1/2 scale. I don't find a huge difference in playing those guitars, you know, right?
mhm,
It's slightly, but you were talking about not, you know, the 7-string, you wish you could, right? I play a 7-string, but I play 25 1/2. When I've played those 26 1/2, 27-inch baritone type guitars,
yeah,
although I like them,
mhm,
stretching your hand, yeah, it could technically make shorter scale necks feel easier to play, but that's not always a good thing because it also makes them unfamiliar again.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and so much of the way I play is comfort and comfort in
yeah.
not easiness, but comfort in familiarity.
Yeah, I actually find it funny because there's a difference in guitarists when some people like to wrestle with their instruments and really like have a tough time, whereas I'm like, I want to make it as easy for myself as possible. If I'm playing in front of a crowd of people, that is the last thing I want to be worrying about. But actually, to add to the Gibson Les Paul, a 335, I would absolutely love to own a 335 in the future, but I have played them recently. I've tried, you know, different versions out, and again, the neck is too thick for me. So
Yes.
it's just another moment of heartbreak because they're just so beautiful, and I know they're amazing instruments, and yet it just doesn't really work for my style of playing.
I 100% first on the first comment you made, I totally agree. I meet guitar players that they will use, to me, the most obnoxiously hard instrument to play with
Yeah,
a really awkward tone settings on their amplifiers, right?
yeah,
And they love the fight, right? They're
yeah,
working it, and I find myself personally, I call it the sweet spot. I can't play little strings with low action through an amp with lots of overdrive, but I can't play big strings with a big neck with an amp with a low amount. I'm right in the middle.
yeah,
um, and what I usually do is I try to make everything as hard as I can tolerate, right to the cusp, right? So,
yeah.
right. So it's not too easy, but it feels like I'm working a little bit, but not too much. Does it make sense?
Right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, definitely,
Um,
definitely.
um, but that's what I love sometimes when you get to pick up another artist's instrument, right?
I know you have to always remember that it was made for that one person.
Yes.
So like I played and actually probably my first moment of heartbreak in the guitar world was playing Eric Clapton's and John Mayer's signature Martins. Like I have seen them, you know, them play those instruments for years, and I just couldn't wait to get my hands on them and then pick them up, and it just didn't work. Neither of them felt good to me.
Yes.
And it's not because they're bad instruments. It's just because they weren't built for me. They were built for those two unbelievably incredible musicians who have big man hands, and a completely different style of playing to me. So, you know.
Yeah, don't feel bad. I'm 6 foot, and I agree with you. When I picked up those instruments, the necks were just really hard, and they had like big strings on top of that. And yep, no, I felt the same experience. Okay, so this is the last question. Okay, and this is hopefully this is fun. When you walk into a music store, what are the things that make you leave or want to stay and check things out?
Okay.
So it's that moment every guitar player feels, the excitement when you walk into a store for the first time. So when you walk into a store for the first time, what's the thing that immediately grabs you or makes you want to leave?
I think it probably just comes down to the people. So if I walk into a guitar store and I feel welcome and someone wants to help me out and say, what would you like to try? And, you know, you have all those guitars at your fingertips, because, you know, a lot of guitar shops now have quite a nice wide range of things. But if they are just at the counter and they don't even look at you when you walk in, I just think that's actually probably one of the things that makes me walk straight out again. It doesn't really matter what's hanging on the wall. I kind of want to feel special if I walk into a guitar store. And it's also, maybe it's an arrogance thing as well. It's like, I always used to like walking into guitar stores and then see me walk through and then sit down and play something that would try and, like, you know, make their heads turn. And I think actually that applies to most guitar players. Like, everyone goes into a guitar store with their best riffs, like just ready and waiting. And you just want to be able to find the instrument that you can really, really do that on. But if the people aren't willing to help you, then it can be pretty difficult. How about you? What's your biggest turn off?
So I'm actually more difficult than you. I need a perfect mix of hello and not too much hello, right? Like, I need them to acknowledge that I've come in and be nice, but then not get on me too fast or too much. Let me come in and check things out, right? But be on hand if I have questions and stuff, right? But I don't. So I feel bad because, especially since I've owned a store in the past and stuff, where I don't want to. I want them to be friendly, but not too friendly, because then I feel awkward. And I don't want them to be too, you know, pushed away or, you know, right, or disinterested, right? Yeah. And so to me, that's the first thing that can draw me on or push me right out before the gear is even put into play.
Absolutely.
And and then of course, you know, the type of gear you see right away. You know, and I always like that question because of that, right? Because we do go to instrument stores, and I think that always tells a lot about us, like when we walk in, right? Because I've asked that question many times, and a lot of times the answer is, if I see too many cheap guitars, I immediately leave. Or if I see too many expensive guitars, I immediately leave. And I'm like, well, that's not the thing that makes me leave yet.
No, that's not it. No. It's always the people. And it can really change everything. Like, I had two very, very nice guitar stores where I grew up, who both of them were very patient with me, because before I could even afford a guitar, they would have me in there and I would just be allowed to play for hours, and they'd just let me play. And eventually I would buy guitars from both of those stores. But I have also witnessed the distant shop owner who is tired, and they've had a long day, and they might have had an argument with their loved one. Something might have gone wrong, and they're just probably not willing to give you the time. But, you know, it can be a sale, or it can be walking out the door empty-handed. So it's a big difference. And I think, especially with the way the internet is going, that personal touch right now is more important than ever.
And then are you a guitar store junkie? Can you withstand being somewhere and not trying to find one? Are you that bad?
I'm getting worse and worse. Yeah. I have to sort of scout out the area now every time I'm traveling. And actually, if I don't find one, or if I don't have enough time to find one, I feel like it's a missed opportunity, because you just never know. You never know what they had.
Yes.
You just never know.
I am very bad.
Yeah.
It's I put my wife in panic mode because we'll be doing something with like a big family reunion or something, right? Somewhere where something is important to time, and she'll see one in the distance and she knows.
Yeah, you've got
no way, and I've done everything you can think of to excuse myself. Like, I got to use the restroom real quick. And I'm just like going a block. Yeah. A block down the street just to stick my head through the, right. So that's why I love that question. Cause I find it gets worse over time. Like, you don't get better at it. You don't go, it's not because you've been to a bunch, you stop going. Actually, you keep going to more. And I find the less I find good ones, the more I have a desire to check out more.
Yeah.
Because you're in hopes to find the magic.
Yeah. And now, especially with the internet and all these guitar shops now having their own YouTube channels and stuff, it just makes me want to go, the internet is so powerful on what you want to go and see. So there are definitely a few in America that I'm just thinking, how do I sort out a road trip and then just vlog the road trip of me going to all those stores? And actually, I went on a trip in 2014, and I wish I had taken advantage of where I was at that time, because I just didn't go and see enough.
The not this year, but last year at the NAMM show, I was at the NAMM show, and I was with some friends, and my wife called me, and it was like 8:30, maybe 8 o'clock at night. We left the NAMM show, went to dinner, and she calls me and she's like, "What's that noise?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's guitar playing." And she goes like, "You guys are still at the NAMM show?" And I'm like, "No, we're at Guitar Center." And she's like, "You're at Guitar Center?" And I'm like, "Well, we left the NAMM show. We went to dinner and there was a Guitar Center. So we went." And she's like, "Didn't you spend all day at the NAMM show?" We're like, "Yeah, but you got to go to the Guitar Center."
You know what? I'm in awe of you being able to do that. In the evenings, of the NAMM show, you just need to eat and drink. That's what you need to do. You can continue talking guitars,
right?
But going to a guitar, that's very impressive.
Yeah, it was. I'm not gonna lie, that was the only time I've ever been embarrassed about it.
Oh, never be ashamed. Never be ashamed.
So, so that's it. They had great questions, right? I want to thank everybody for asking and come up with great stuff. And I want to thank Mary for coming on and doing a chat with us today. And
thanks for having me so much. I love your channel. So it's a real privilege.
Thank you. I love your channel too. So like I said, I'm going to put everything in the description down below, how to link to her channel so you can subscribe. And I don't know what else to say. Maybe we'll just end it at that. We'll just say thank everybody for checking out the video and spending some time with us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
And then look forward to, you're not going to the NAMM show, right? They're not going to fly all the way to the US for the summer NAMM?
No, I wish I was though. I wish I was. It's a smaller version, isn't it?
It's smaller. It's going to be my first summer NAMM. It's supposed to be really small. So we're going to see how it's like. I heard it's, because it won't be as chaotic, which I think I'll look forward to.
Yes. Yeah. So I will. Hopefully I'll make it out next year.
All right. Well, as you guys know, I want to thank you all for checking out this video. Make sure you subscribe to Mary's channel as well. And as always, thank you for your time and know your gear.